You know, we had negotiations today, or rather, yesterday and today, with representatives of the OSCE leadership, with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Switzerland, who is the current chair in office of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, and with the Secretary General of the OSCE, Mr. Sinelioglu. We, generally speaking, with the Swiss colleague, we communicate with each other regularly, quite regularly. Our latest contact, the previous one, took place in September of last year on the sidelines of the 80th session of the General Assembly. And even back then, Mr. Cassis informed us that in connection with Switzerland's election as the presiding chairman for the year 2026, he expressed his desire to visit Moscow. We, of course, wholeheartedly supported this intention of his. Our discussions were candid and open, both yesterday and again today.
Everyone,
Swiss colleagues and those representing the Secretariat understand the significant challenges they will need to overcome, considering the profound crisis within the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. The reasons for the crisis are, of course, quite well known, but we still took the opportunity to discuss them in more detail, and we responded to several questions raised by our interlocutors. They bring things into the organization to the detriment of any discussions regarding those specific areas that it is necessary to review these matters annually. They bring in subjects and issues that clearly do not fall within the established framework, nor within the specific sphere of its actual competence, simply to once again introduce another one of these convoluted Ukrainian pretexts or provocations, and then to report back to those individuals who are ultimately directing and overseeing this entire process. OSCE is based on the fundamental principle of the indivisibility of security, the principle of equals in indivisible security. This principle has been consistently affirmed and declared within the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe at its highest echelons, including at the 1999 Istanbul Summit and the 2010 Astana Summit. It is clearly articulated in these documents that security is indivisible. No one has the right to enhance their own security at the expense of the security of others. And furthermore, there is a particularly important, indeed a very concrete objective. No single country, group of countries or organization has the right to claim dominance within the OSCE space. But the fact that NATO is engaged in precisely that which is strictly forbidden, its ambition to dominate, and not merely to dominate, but to continually draw into itself an ever-increasing number of new members, this is something that is very well known to everyone. We do not want NATO to be responsible for the security of the entire Eurasian continent, and this is precisely the objective that NATO has declared. We, together with the People's Republic of China and other members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, as well as BRICS, advocate for upholding the principle of indivisible security. We will, of course, be prepared for a comprehensive discussion on this very important topic with our American counterparts once their overall position regarding the crucial aspects of what is commonly referred to as strategic stability becomes fully clear. Meanwhile, as you are well aware, the Strategic Offensive Arms Treaty expired yesterday, and this has unfortunately created a significant vacuum. Our position was laid out in the most comprehensive manner in a special statement which our ministry announced, and we will proceed from the understanding that in principle Russia is prepared for any turn of events. We, of course, prefer dialogue and will wait to see how ready the United States will be for the same. In general, the conversation about the role of the OSCE in addressing security problems in the formation of a new security architecture, it was quite interesting. Our interlocutors acknowledged that without adequately addressing the Asian dimension, our collective continent-wide efforts will without a doubt certainly prove to be entirely insufficient. However, exactly how all of this will ultimately play out, we still need to observe. Across all three baskets of OSCE activities, the politico-military, the economic, and the humanitarian, there is a complete and utter stagnation. Or alternatively, a process of Ukrainization, as I already mentioned at the very beginning of my introductory remarks. And yet, the OSCE is doing absolutely nothing to address the situation. Despite the fact that there are institutions of special representatives responsible for the rights of national minorities, for the freedom of the mass media, and for human rights, these very institutions are proving their complete inadequacy. Our colleagues, especially Secretary General Sinir Lioglu, have actively supported our thesis that it is completely unacceptable when a structure that calls itself an organization, it has no charter, and all the institutions that have been established within this organization operate without any universally approved rules. All this despite the fact that the OSCE has proclaimed the principle of consensus. We must restore order in this organization, especially when it comes to election monitoring. An utterly unseemly situation has developed there, where to some countries, these so-called developed democracies, only 10 observers are sent, while to a nation situated east of Vienna, as the saying goes, hundreds upon hundreds are dispatched. The sheer disgrace that the Bureau for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights brought upon itself when it was observing the developments and what was taking place in Romania during the first round of the elections after that specific round, as you are undoubtedly aware. The candidate who had become the leader was simply removed from the race, while the OSCE remained completely silent. A year ago, specifically around late March of last year, President Trump, during a telephone conversation with President Putin, suggested, let's consider perhaps declaring a monthly energy truce where both sides of the conflict would refrain from attacking energy infrastructure. President Putin immediately, during that very same conversation, agreed to this proposal. We then publicly announced this truce, this very truce, and for an entire month, we did not touch any of Ukraine's energy facilities. Ukraine, for its part, remained silent regarding this proposal from Washington, and this month, over 130 attacks on Russian energy facilities have been recorded. We still adhere to these rules, attacking only those targets that directly possess a dual purpose or are of purely military significance. So when Ukraine is always forgiven for everything and all the blame is placed squarely on the Russian Federation, well, you understand the press should, after all, somehow, work honestly and strive to uphold our profession. No one ever showed us this. Perhaps our delegation, which traveled to Abu Dhabi for a second time, was informed about the topics being discussed there. I haven't yet had the opportunity to speak with them personally. Yesterday, we were already engaged with our Swiss colleagues in negotiations, and that continued throughout this morning. However, what is currently leaking into the press, and what isn't even leaking but, was explicitly stated by Rutte himself during his address to the parliament, specifically Ukraine's Verkhovna Rada, clearly indicates that an intervention is being prepared. He stated that security guarantees would involve automatic actions by a coalition of willing nations, at one stage acting independently and at a later stage with the full support of the United States. He also mentioned that Britain and France are prepared to station their troops on Ukrainian soil. So it's precisely the opposite, in stark contrast to those collective security guarantees that had been mutually agreed upon between us and the Ukrainians in April of 2022. At that point, it was truly a fair deal. And now what we have are security guarantees for that regime, which the West is determined to preserve at all costs, just so it can continue its attempts to bite the Russian Federation.